Mario vs Donkey Kong first released for the Game Boy Advance back in 2004 and was a puzzle platformer where you played as Mario as he tried to retrieve his mechanical mini-Marios stolen by his old foe. It's just received a full remake on the Nintendo Switch, but is this still a rivalry for the ages, or should these two have kissed and made up years ago? Well, thank you to Nintendo for the review code, and now let's find out. So in terms of story then, the game begins with Donkey Kong watching TV and seeing an advert for the latest new toy on shelves being the Mini Mario. He wants to get himself one of these, but on going down to the local shop they're completely sold out, and in a moment of rage he decides instead to raid the factory itself and relieve them of all of their Mini Marios. This leads to Mario himself then chasing his old foe through a number of themed stages and worlds to try and get these toys back. So in terms of gameplay then, Mario vs Donkey Kong is a puzzle platformer where you play as Mario, navigating a number of hazards on screen in order to get a key to get through the door and chase Donkey Kong further into the factory. There is more to it than this though, in that there are presents that you can collect, as well as a Mini Mario to find in order to move on to the next level. Things do start in a fairly simple manner, but they do become more complicated as you move on through the world, with certain worlds having their own specific hazards and more mechanics being introduced as you move on. Early doors, there'll be switches that you need to activate in order to materialise certain coloured blocks or make them transparent, allowing you to pass through, and obviously pressing these in the correct order will allow you to navigate stages. There'll be springs to jump on, enemies of course to either defeat or avoid, death traps in terms of spikes, but as you move on you'll start to see things such as lasers, fireballs, piranha plants, and just a higher, more intricate level design that will see the stages spread across a much larger screen. Now if you've played the original from 2004 then you'll very much know what to expect here. If you haven't played that game though, but you have played the earlier Donkey Kong game, or Donkey Kong 94 as it was known on the Game Boy, then again you'll be very much at home, because this game series, starting with that original in 2004, was very much inspired by that game. I do believe in fact the initial concept was to remake that game for the Game Boy Advance before it kind of became its own thing. Mario has a number of moves that he can use to get across the stages, including traditional jumps, double jumps, backflips, etc. And he can use these to make up the space and get up through the stages quicker. And sometimes you'll need to be quite creative, because it might be you need to put the key down, say, to then press a number of switches, and that key is on a timer. It will go back to where you originally found it when that timer expires, get back to the key and pick it back up again. And it's this aspect that does give the game a nice sense of time management at times too. It also brings elements from earlier Mario games such as Donkey Kong Jr. in the way that you interact with vines, for example, and the noises that Mario makes as he does triple jump or backflip his way through the stages is exactly as it was in Mario 64. It's nice to see those nods to other games. The basic stage types that you'll encounter are the ones where you need to find the key to get through the door and then collect the Mini Mario from the next screen to complete that one stage. You'll have stages where you need to lead a number of the Mini Marios that you've found across a stage, collecting letters from the word toy and then getting to a toy chest. You'll have the boss encounters with Donkey Kong himself, which end each world. And there are a number of other expert levels that you can unlock as you play by gaining the stars that each stage rewards. It's an idea that's been around for about 30 years now, going all the way back to that Game Boy Donkey Kong game, and the idea does hold up very well. It's still very thought-provoking, you'll need to be quite agile to get through the stages, and it does certainly have that pick up and play value that's so important in games such as these with short, sharp stages. It could potentially become a little repetitive if you were to play it in large chunks at once, but for me it's always about small play sessions with games such as these, leaving you wanting just a bit more each time so that you are eager to return to them a few hours or even a few days later. The level designs themselves are clever, and I do like how much they start to mix things up as you go on, and that's before we mention of course that this new remake does include a local multiplayer option, something that wasn't in the original. I'll be honest, I was expecting the multiplayer mode to just be the same again, with an extra person tagging along for the ride, and whilst the levels themselves don't change, what does is that you now need 2 keys to get through each door, a silver key and then the original golden key. This does change the levels up enough to make 2-player worthwhile if you've played through single player say, but it would have been nice to perhaps have some new stages that were designed with just multiplayer in mind. As well as that multiplayer mode, they have also included a new casual mode for this remake. It plays very similarly to the base game, with the exception being that you can take quite a few more hits. You return to a checkpoint in a bubble if you do get hit, and you also have no timer, so there's no stress of the time ticking down as you try to complete the stages. It's completely optional and you can switch between it on the fly through the game, which I think is a nice touch, allowing you to get past any spikes in difficulty that you may be encountering. Gameplay holds up very well, and this is due to the fantastic level design of that original game, and there have been some tweaks and additions made to this new entry, and it gets 18 out of 20. Controls have that fluency about them that allow for the moves that you can pull off to get yourself through stages, and they always assist the player in doing exactly what they need to do. They get 17 out of 20. In terms of the visuals, of course this game has had an overhaul and goes for a more 2.5D style for its character sprites as opposed to the more pre-rendered look of the original, and it has a lovely vibrancy to it with a strong use of colour that is accentuated by the fact that there is a nice amount of variety in the stages as you move through the game. I like the animation of Mario and Donkey Kong and the creatures that you'll encounter as you go through. The little nuances such as Mario looking down at the perilous position he's in as he holds onto an enemy's tail, or Donkey Kong poking his head through the keyhole to assess the level that you are about to embark on in order to try and catch him. I am of the school of thought that if you do remake a game in a completely new graphical style, it's always nice to include the original style in there and be able to switch between the two at the press of a button. We've seen this recently with the new Tomb Raider remasters, for example. This isn't the case here, which is a shame, but that doesn't detract from the quality of the new graphics. My only real gripe, and it is quite a personal one, is I do wish that Nintendo would try different art styles in their Mario spin-off games. Ever since the arrival of the new Super Mario games, especially the Wii one onwards, we seem to get a very similar style for all Mario 2D games, and whilst it definitely looks very pleasant, I do just miss that chance taken by Nintendo when it comes to these spin-off series. In terms of the audio, it's very much what you'd expect from a first-party Nintendo game. It has that whimsical feel to it, and the music always matches what's going on screen. And as is always the case, it just adds a whole new level of professionalism to the feel of the game. It's something Nintendo are very good at, to be fair, that high level of polish, and the musical score, as always, is a major part of this. Visuals are objectively an improvement on the original, and they are certainly bright and charming. They get 17 out of 20. Audio is at the standard you would expect from Nintendo, and it's nice hearing things such as the original Donkey Kong riff played out at times such as in boss battles. It also gets 17 out of 20. Mario vs Donkey Kong costs £39.99 and regional equivalents are on your screen now. Now this is actually £10 cheaper than the standard Nintendo first party price on the eShop, and joins just a few games in falling into this lower price category. With over 100 levels to try, that new co-op mode of course, and the high production values across the board, it's not necessarily overpriced, although I do feel perhaps putting it in line with something like the Metroid Prime remaster at just a slightly lower price, I think it was about £5 cheaper, would have suited a little better. And it does very much depend on your stamina for such games. Some people may find it slightly repetitive after a while, although the levels do present their own challenge as things go on. There is a demo on the eShop available, although it is only about 10 minutes long to be honest. It shows you a few of the very early levels, and whilst it does give you the basic gist of what the game's about, it doesn't in any way do the game justice in just how fiendish levels become later on. Not the best advert for their own game from Nintendo, I must say. On balance, value gets 14 out of 20. To conclude, Mario vs Donkey Kong was a very good game when it released 20 years ago, and its gameplay holds up incredibly well to this day. This is mainly down to its very tight level design and the clever puzzles that you'll experience as you try to get through each stage, and it certainly has that Nintendo charm to it, something they always seem to implement in their games. The new graphics, some new worlds, and of course that new multiplayer mode are definitely pluses and enhance the experience of the original, and my only major gripe really is perhaps remakes such as this could just reference the older game a little bit more, be it in terms of being able to switch back to the original art style, or just perhaps having a few little Easter eggs in there, gallery modes or such, to celebrate the original game in its pure form. That being said though, this is still a great game to play today if you like such games of course, and it'll be nice to see a newer entry in this series come to the Switch or its successor if this one performs well. Mario vs Donkey Kong gets a SwitchUp score of 83%. Thank you everybody for watching this review. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do remember to leave a like if you did. I'd be interested to know which Game Boy or Game Boy Advance game you'd love to see get a full remake for the Switch. Let me know in the comment section below, and don't forget, if you are looking for eShop credit to pick this game up, you can get your eShop cards at our website, switchup.gg. Doing so will get you 5% of your purchase price back in cashback, and you can then use this against a future purchase, of course. There's also a link down there to Play Asia if you're looking to import any games. Use the link, use the code stated, and you get yourself 5% off of your order from there. Quick thank you to our patrons and our channel members for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, and until next time, happy gaming.